Elara had always heard the world differently. Not with her ears, not precisely, but with something deeper, a part of her that hummed and resonated like a plucked string. It was a symphony woven from the rustle of leaves, the quiet sigh of stones settling in the earth, the slow, patient crawl of roots beneath the soil. Most people heard the wind as a simple whoosh, a bluster against the eaves of their homes in Oakhaven Valley. Elara heard it as a long, rambling story, told in 1,000 tiny voices, each carrying a fragment of memory from the places it had touched. This was the whisper. The whisper was the secret language of the world, a gentle, omnipresent hum that Elara believed held the very essence of life. It spoke of the earth's slow, steady pulse, the sky's vast, dreaming thoughts, and the ceaseless, quiet work of all living things. When she pressed her ear to the moss-covered trunk of the ancient oak that stood sentinel at the edge of her family's small farm, she didn't just hear the distant buzz of bees or the chirp of crickets. She heard the tree's deep, rhythmic breath, the slow, deliberate journey of sap through its veins, and the patient wisdom of centuries etched into its gnarled bark. The tree, in turn, seemed to whisper back, not in words, but in a feeling of immense calm, a sense of belonging that settled deep in Elara's bones. Oakhaven Valley was a place of soft, rolling hills, dappled sunlight, and streams that giggled over smooth pebbles. The houses were built of warm gray stone and timber, their roofs often crowned with thick patches of emerald moss. Smoke curled lazily from chimneys, carrying the scent of hearth fires and baking bread across the fields. It was a peaceful place, where folks lived simple lives, tending their gardens, spinning wool, and sharing stories by lamplight. Most people in Oakhaven, while kind and observant in their own ways, seemed to exist in a world of louder, more immediate sounds. The clatter of pots, the lowing of cattle, the chatter of neighbors, these were the sounds that filled their days. The subtle, underlying current of the whisper, however, remained unheard by them, or at least, unacknowledged. Elara, with her quiet nature and eyes the color of twilight, often felt like an outsider in her own home, not because she was unwelcome, but because her internal world was so different. Her mother, a bustling woman with a laugh like wind chimes, would often find Elara staring intently at a wilting flower or lost in contemplation of a particularly vibrant patch of lichen on a stone. "Daydreaming again, little sparrow?" her mother would ask, her voice warm but tinged with a familiar weariness. Elara would simply smile, unable to explain that she wasn't dreaming, but listening. She was listening to the flower tell its story of thirst, or the lichen describing the slow, patient erosion of time. She had tried once to explain it to her older brother, Finn. He was a sturdy boy, always busy with chores or games of tag with the other village children. "Finn," she had whispered one breezy afternoon, as they sat on the porch, "can you hear the oak tree singing?" Finn had paused, a stick he was whittling held still in his hand, and cocked his head. "Singing? It's just creaking in the wind, Elara, and there's a robin in its branches. Are you feeling all right?" He had patted her head, a gesture of affectionate dismissal, and returned to his whittling. Elara had learned then that the whisper was hers alone. As the years passed, Elara grew, and so did her awareness of the whisper. She discovered it wasn't just sounds, but feelings too. The deep contentment of a well-tended field, the quiet sorrow of a forgotten grave, the joyous burst of energy from a newly sprouted seed. It was the world's living soul, made manifest in 1,000 tiny sensations. But lately, something had changed. The whisper, which had always been a vibrant, continuous symphony, was starting to fade. It wasn't an abrupt silence, not a sudden stop, but a slow, almost imperceptible dimming, like a lamp running low on oil. The rustle of the leaves now felt less like a story, and more like a hesitant sigh. The streams, once full of playful giggles, now seemed to murmur with a quiet melancholy. The colors of the wildflowers in the meadow, which used to sing with vibrant hues, now seemed a touch less brilliant, a shade muted. Even the air, which had always hummed with an invisible energy, felt heavier, flatter. Elara noticed it first in the ancient oak. Its deep, rhythmic breath, once so strong and reassuring, was now faint, almost a whisper of a whisper. When she pressed her ear to its bark, she felt a quiet yearning, a deep fatigue she had never encountered before. It was as if the tree, and indeed the whole valley, was slowly losing its voice. The change wasn't just in the whisper. It was reflected in the world around her, though others seemed less attuned to its true cause. The harvests in Oakhaven Valley, once abundant, were now a little less bountiful. The wool from the sheep, once thick and lustrous, felt a little coarser. The villagers, usually quick with a smile and a hearty greeting, seemed a little more preoccupied, their brows a little more furrowed. They blamed the weather, a longer winter, a drier summer, but Alara knew it was something deeper. The world itself was growing weary. One crisp autumn morning, Alara found herself sitting by the banks of the Silverbrook, a stream whose waters usually sparkled with 1,000 tiny joyful voices. Today, it flowed with a subdued current, its surface reflecting the gray sky like a polished mirror. The voices were there, but they were hushed, tinged with a quiet sorrow. She dipped her hand into the cool water, trying to coax a song from it, but it merely swirled around her fingers, cold and uncommunicative. A knot of worry tightened in her stomach. The whisper was truly fading. She knew there was only one person in Oakhaven Valley who might understand, who might even believe her. Granwe Totto. Gran lived in a small crooked cottage at the very edge of the valley, nestled against the foothills of the Whisperwind Mountains. Her cottage was famed for its unruly garden, where herbs and flowers of every conceivable shape and color grew in riotous abundance, seemingly untamed, yet perfectly harmonious. Villagers sought Gran for remedies for coughs and fevers, for advice on stubborn animals, or simply for a cup of her spiced tea and a story from the old times. They called her Granwe, not because she was everyone's grandmother, but because her wisdom felt as old and comforting as the earth itself. Taking a deep breath, Alara rose and began her journey to Granwe's cottage. The path was familiar, winding through rustling fields and under the skeletal branches of autumn trees. Each step, however, felt heavier than usual, laden with the quiet anxiety that now clung to her. The world, which had once been so vibrant and alive with its hidden symphony, now felt like a painting whose colors were slowly draining away. When she finally reached Granwe's cottage, the air around it was different. Even here, at the edge of the fading whisper, there was a faint hum, a gentle thrum of life that Alara hadn't felt in days. Granwe's garden, even in the encroaching chill of autumn, was a riot of color and fragrance, a defiant burst of life against the valley's creeping stillness. Bees still buzzed among the late-blooming marigolds, and a tiny, iridescent hummingbird darted between the bell-shaped flowers of a sprawling vine. Elarak knocked softly on the sturdy oak door, carved with twisting vines and fantastical creatures. A moment later, the door creaked open, revealing Granwell. Her face was a tapestry of wrinkles, each one a testament to a long life lived close to the earth. Her eyes, however, sparkled with an almost youthful intelligence, the color of warm honey. She wore a simple homespun dress and a shawl woven from undyed wool, smelling faintly of herbs and wood smoke. Elara, my little star listener, Granwe said, her voice like the gentle rustle of dry leaves, warm and welcoming. I felt your worry approaching, like a small cloud on the horizon. Come in, child, come in. Elara stepped into the cozy cottage. The interior was a marvel, filled with bundles of dried herbs hanging from the rafters, jars of shimmering liquids, and shelves overflowing with books, smooth stones, and curious artifacts. A fire crackled merrily in the hearth, casting dancing shadows on the walls. The air was thick with the scent of thyme, lavender, and something indefinably old and magical. Granwe gestured to a worn armchair by the fire. Tea? She asked, already pouring from a ceramic pot that sat steaming on the hearth. It's mugwort and elderflower today, good for troubled thoughts. Elara nodded, accepting the warm mug. Granwe, she began, her voice barely above a whisper. The whisper. It's fading. It's so quiet now. The Silverbrook, the oak tree, everything is dimming. Granwe settled into her own chair, stirring her tea with a small wooden spoon. Her eyes, usually twinkling with amusement, were now serious, reflecting the firelight. Ah, Elara, she sighed, a deep, weary sound. So you feel it too. I knew you would. You've always had the ears for it, haven't you, little whisper hearer? Elara looked up, hope flickering in her chest. You hear it too? Granwe chuckled softly, a sound like pebbles tumbling in a stream. Oh, child, I don't just hear it. I remember it. I remember when it was a roaring river, not just a quiet brook. The whisper, as you call it, is the living breath of this world, the song of its soul. Some call it the deep, hum, others the heartbeat of the land. It is the magic that binds all things, the silent conversation between the earth and the sky, the life force that makes the flowers bloom and the rivers flow with joy. She took a slow sip of her tea, her gaze distant, as if looking through the walls of the cottage and into the very fabric of time. Once, long, long ago, the whisper was strong. It sang through every stone, every tree, every creature. People then, they didn't just hear it, they lived by it. They understood its rhythms, spoke its language. The world was vibrant, brimming with a magic that was as natural as breathing. The world was vibrant, brimming with a magic that was as natural as breathing. What happened? Elara asked, leaning forward, utterly captivated. Time mostly, Granway said, a wistful note in her voice. And forgetfulness. As generations passed, people stopped listening. They focused on louder things, on what they could see and touch and build with their own hands. The whisper, being a gentle thing, retreated. It didn't disappear entirely, but it became fainter, accessible only to those with truly open hearts and quiet minds. Like you, Elara. Elara! But it's fading even for me now, Elara insisted, her voice trembling. It feels like it's dying. Granra reached across and gently squeezed Elara's hand. Not dying, child, but certainly in peril. The stillness, as some of the old stories call it, is growing. It's a kind of apathy, a dullness that creeps into the world when its heart song grows faint. It saps the color from the flowers, the joy from the streams, the very essence from life. The old ones foretold of such a time when the whisper would become so faint that only a true whisper hearer, one with a pure heart and an unwavering spirit, could find its source. And Elara's eyes widened. Rekindle its flame? Can it be done? Granwa nodded. A slow, deliberate movement. There is a legend, whispered down through the ages, of a place where the whisper's heart still beats strong, a place where its purest essence resides. It is said to be a single, ancient bloom, a flower that drinks directly from the earth's deepest hum, sustaining the whisper for the entire valley. It is called the echo bloom. For centuries, a guardian family, the whisper weavers, tended it, ensuring its vitality. But the last of the whisper weavers, the echo bloom, Elara repeated, the words feeling ancient and powerful on her tongue. Where is it? Granway's gaze settled on Elara, full of both solemnity and hope. That, little star listener, is what you must discover. The echo bloom won't reveal itself to just anyone. It will only answer to the one who can hear its call, the one whose heart resonates with the deepest notes of the whisper. You, Elara, are that one. Elara felt a sudden weight settle on her shoulders, a mixture of fear and exhilaration. Quest. A real quest, not just a story from a book. How do I find it? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Gran rose and moved to a heavy wooden chest in the corner of the room. She lifted the lid, revealing a lining of soft, shimmering moss. Inside, nestled on the moss, was a small, intricately carved wooden flute, its surface smooth and worn from countless touches. It was made of a dark, rich wood, and shimmered faintly in the firelight. This, Granway said, picking up the flute and handing it to Elara, is the song of the roots. It was carved by the first whisper weaver, long before even my ancestors walked this valley. It doesn't play tunes as you know them, not with your breath, but with your heart. When you are truly listening to the whisper, when your own spirit is aligned with the world's song, it will guide you. It will point the way to places where the whisper is still strong, to the fragments, its memory. Elara ran her fingers over the smooth wood of the flute. It felt warm, almost alive, in her hand. A faint, almost imperceptible hum resonated from it, a tiny echo of the whisper. But the mountains are vast, Granway, Elara said, looking towards the window where the jagged peaks of the Whisperwind Mountains were silhouetted against the fading light. And they're dangerous. Wild beasts, treacherous paths? True, Granway conceded, but the whisper will guide you, and you will not be entirely alone. The song of the roots will not only show you the way, but it will also awaken small, sleeping pockets of the whisper that still exist, tiny guardians that remember the old magic. Listen to them. They will offer aid when you need it most. Grand returned to the chest and pulled out a small leather-bound pouch. This contains a few essentials, dried berries, a bit of bread, and a small vial of my special lumina-dew. It glows faintly in the dark and helps to sharpen the senses. You will need a cloak, of course. The mountain nights are cold. The mountain nights are cold. Elara felt a surge of determination. The fear was still there, a nervous flutter in her stomach, but it was now overshadowed by a sense of purpose, a calling that resonated with the deepest part of her being. She was the Whisper Hera. She had to find the Echo Bloom. "I'll go," she said, her voice firm. "I'll find the Echo Bloom." Granwis smiled, a rare radiant smile that made her old eyes sparkle like starlight. "I knew you would, little star listener. The journey will be long and it will test your spirit, but the whisper will be with you. Listen always, trust your heart, and remember, even the faintest whisper can carry the greatest truth." As dusk settled over Oakhaven Valley, painting the sky in hues of deep violet and fiery orange, Elara prepared for her journey. She packed the pouch, donned a sturdy cloak that Granway had given her, and secured the Song of the Roots carefully at her belt. The village was growing quiet, the sounds of evening settling in, distant dogs barking, the lowing of cattle returning to their barns, the gentle creak of doors. But beneath it all, Elara still felt the muted fading hum of the whisper, a silent plea that urged her onward. She slipped out of Granwy's cottage and onto the path that led towards the mountains. The air grew colder with each step, the shadows lengthening like grasping fingers. The Whisperwind Mountains loomed before her, dark and mysterious, their peaks piercing the deepening twilight. She took a deep breath, the scent of pine and damp earth filling her lungs. The immense silence of the mountains was both daunting and inviting. As she walked, she held the Song of the Roots, feeling its faint thrum against her palm. She closed her eyes for a moment, letting her inner ear open, reaching out for the fading symphony of the world. For a moment, she heard nothing but the wind sighing through the trees. Then, a faint, almost imperceptible tremor, a delicate ripple in the air caught her attention. It was a thread of sound, thin and fragile, but undeniably there. It seemed to come from deeper within the mountains, a faint call, like a distant bell. It was the whisper. It was calling her. Elara adjusted her cloak, pulled her hood up against the chill, and began to walk towards the sound, towards the heart of the Whisperwind Mountains, towards the ancient, lost Echo Bloom. Her adventure had truly begun. The path Elara followed was not one marked by human hands. It was a path woven by the ancient magic of the mountains themselves, illuminated by a faint internal glow that seemed to seep from the very stones. As she delved deeper, the crisp mountain air grew softer, imbued with a strange, sweet scent, like rain on ancient earth, mingled with the fragrance of unseen, night-blooming flowers. The world around her began to transform. The rugged gray granite of the outer peaks gave way to rock faces that shimmered with veins of amethyst and quartz, catching the scarce moonlight and refracting it into 1,000 tiny dancing colors. Luminescent moss, the color of deep-sea glowworms, traced intricate patterns along the cave entrances and crevasse walls, casting a soft ethereal light that made the shadows dance and whisper secrets. The whisper, which had been a distant bell, now resolved into a more complex symphony. It was not a single note, but a chorus, a gentle, sustained hum that resonated not just in her ears, but deep within her chest. It felt like the collective breath of the mountains, the soft murmur of forgotten streams, the sigh of ancient trees whose roots delved into the very heart of the earth. Sometimes a high, clear note would ring out, like a crystal goblet struck in a silent hall, guiding her around a precarious ledge or through a particularly dense thicket of shimmering, silver-leafed ferns. Other times it would deepen into a low, resonant thrum, a comforting vibration that seemed to steady her steps on slippery, dew-kissed stones. The air itself felt alive, thick with an almost palpable sense of ancient power. It tingled on her skin, raising goosebumps not from cold, but from an exquisite awareness of magic. Trees here were unlike any she had seen before. Their bark was smooth, like polished jade or obsidian, and their leaves, instead of green, were a myriad of blues and purples, each edged with a faint, silvery glow. They grew in curious spirals, their branches reaching towards the unseen sky above, as if perpetually seeking some celestial light. Strange, delicate flowers, like tiny, bell-shaped lanterns, hung from their branches, their petals unfurling slowly, to reveal a soft inner luminescence that pulsed in time with the whisper. Elara found herself in a winding labyrinth of natural passages. Some were wide and airy, leading her through glades where fireflies, the size of her thumb, drifted like scattered embers, their lights blinking in complex rhythmic patterns. Others narrowed into tight squeezes, forcing her to turn sideways, her cloak brushing against cold, damp stone that shimmered with tiny embedded crystals. There were moments when the path seemed to vanish entirely, dissolving into a wall of swirling, opalescent mist. But each time, the whisper would grow louder, more insistent, guiding her hand to a hidden lever disguised as a protruding rock, or drawing her gaze to a barely perceptible shift in the mist that revealed the true way forward. She learned to trust the whisper implicitly. It wasn't just a sound, it was a presence, a gentle, knowing hand that seemed to smooth her path and light her way. It spoke to her not in words, but in feelings. A prickle of caution when she neared a hidden drop, a surge of warmth when she found the correct turn, a sense of profound peace when she paused to rest beside a pool of water so clear and still, it reflected the luminous ceiling like a perfect, upside-down sky. As she journeyed deeper, the mountains began to reveal their true, secret nature. She passed through caverns where stalactites and stalagmites had grown together over millennia, forming intricate, cathedral-like pillars that soared into the darkness, each dripping with a slow, rhythmic plink that harmonized with the greater song of the whisper. Water flowed everywhere, not in roaring torrents, but in gentle cascades and trickling streams, each drop catching the ambient glow and sparkling like falling jewels. Some streams ran with water that shimmered with liquid silver, others with a deep sapphire blue, and Elara, thirsty, found them sweet and refreshing, leaving a faint, pleasant tingle on her tongue. After what felt like an age of walking, guided by the ever-present song, Elara emerged from a narrow, ivy-draped archway into a vast hidden glade. It was unlike anything she had ever imagined. Above, the cavern ceiling was so high it was lost in shadow, but shafts of pure, ethereal light, like moonbeams filtered through 1,000 layers of silk, pierced the darkness, illuminating the glade below. Here, the trees were even grander, their glowing leaves forming a canopy of shifting colors, from deep indigo to vibrant emerald. Strange winged creatures, like moths spun from moonlight and stardust, flitted between the branches, leaving trails of faint, shimmering dust in their wake. Their wings beat silently, creating tiny eddies in the magically charged air. In the center of the glade stood a pool, not of water, but of liquid starlight. It pulsed with a soft inner radiance, its surface swirling gently like slow-motion nebulae. Around its edges grew tall, slender plants with leaves like unfurling scrolls, inscribed with delicate, glowing runes that Elara couldn't read but felt a deep resonance with. The whisper here was no longer a distant sound, it was the very air she breathed, a resonant hum that vibrated through every fiber of her being. It felt like standing inside a giant, ancient bell, its gentle chime echoing through her very bones. As Elara stepped closer to the starlight pool, a tiny, shimmering figure detached itself from one of the glowing scroll plants. It was no larger than her hand, translucent and iridescent, like a miniature aurora borealis given form. Its body was composed of swirling light, with delicate, moth-like wings that beat with an almost imperceptible flutter. It had no discernible face, but 2 points of brighter light suggested eyes, and a faint musical chime emanated from it, harmonizing perfectly with the whisper. This was a lumen sprite, a creature of pure light and sound, born of the mountain's deepest magic. The lumen sprite circled Elara once, twice, its light growing brighter with each pass, as if assessing her. A wave of warmth, like a gentle caress, washed over her, and she felt a deep sense of calm, a knowing that this creature meant her no harm. Its chiming grew more distinct, resolving into a pattern, a series of rising and falling notes that seemed to pose a question. Elara, instinctively understanding, reached out a hand, palm open. The lumen sprite hovered above it for a moment, then settled delicately on her skin. It felt like a dewdrop of pure light, cool and vibrant. As it touched her, a stream of images, not quite thoughts but impressions, flowed into her mind. She saw flashes of ancient times, of the mountains being formed, of a great light blooming in their heart, of a time when the whisper was not just a sound, but a language spoken by all living things. She saw the echo bloom, not as a single flower, but as a nexus, a heart of pure magic that connected the mountains to the stars, to the very weave of existence. Then the images shifted, darkening, showing shadows creeping, a fading, a silence descending. The echo bloom, once vibrant, now dormant, its light dimmed, its song almost forgotten. The lumen sprite pulsed on her hand, its light fading slightly, then brightening with renewed urgency, guiding her gaze to a particular spot on the far side of the starlight pool. There, nestled amongst the glowing scroll plants, was a large smooth stone, almost like an altar. It was dull and gray, utterly devoid of the shimmering life that permeated the rest of the glade, as if the magic itself recoiled from it. Yet the whisper, which was so strong here, seemed to emanate directly from this stone, as if trapped within it. Elara approached the stone, her heart thrumming with a mixture of anticipation and awe. As she drew nearer, she noticed faint etchings on its surface, almost worn away by time. They depicted swirling patterns, stars, and abstract representations of sound waves. At the very center of the stone there was a shallow indentation, perfectly circular, about the size of her palm. It glowed with a faint internal light, a mere ember compared to the vibrancy of the pool, but undeniably there. The whisper was strongest here, a concentrated hum that seemed to plead, to yearn. "Is this where the echo bloom should be?" she whispered, her voice barely audible in the symphony of the mountains. The lumen sprite detached itself from her hand and flew to the indentation, pulsing rapidly as if nodding. Then it began to spin, faster and faster, its light intensifying until it became a dazzling miniature vortex. The whisper swelled around her, a crescendo of longing and hope. It was clear what she had to do. The echo bloom was not on the stone, but within it, or perhaps the stone was a key, a vessel. The indentation was waiting for something. Elara looked down at her own hand, at the faint, star-shaped birthmark on her palm, the one that sometimes pulsed with a gentle warmth when magic was near. It was the same size, the same shape, as the indentation in the stone. A shiver of understanding, a deep, ancient knowing, ran through her. Her grandmother's stories, her own strange connection to the mountains, the dreams of shimmering flowers, it all converged here in this moment. Taking a deep breath, Elara placed her open palm over the glowing indentation. The moment her skin touched the stone, a jolt, not of pain but of pure, unadulterated energy, surged through her. The star-shaped birthmark on her hand flared with a brilliant silver light, mirroring the glow in the stone. The lumen sprite zipped around her head, its chimes rising to an ecstatic, joyous trill. The whisper intensified, becoming a powerful harmonic wave that filled the entire glade, shaking the very air. The dull gray stone beneath her hand began to change. Tiny cracks, like fine spiderwebs, spread across its surface, each line glowing with the same silver light as her birthmark. The cracks deepened, widening, and from within them, a soft green light began to emanate, followed by a faint earthy scent, like fresh growth after a long winter. The stone wasn't breaking, it was unfurling. Slowly, majestically, the stone began to peel back, not in fragments but in layers, like the petals of a colossal, ancient flower made of rock and crystal. The outer shell crumbled away, revealing layers of shimmering, translucent crystal, each one catching the light of the glade and refracting it into a kaleidoscope of colors. The green light intensified, growing warmer, brighter, and the earthy scent deepened, now mingled with the fragrance of 1,000 different blossoms. As the last layer of crystal peeled back and dissolved into motes of shimmering dust, what remained was not a single flower, but a radiant, pulsating core of pure, concentrated light and energy. It was roughly the size of a small tree, formed from interwoven tendrils of pure emerald light, dotted with blossoms of every hue, each petal seeming to be spun from solidified starlight. This was the heart of the echo bloom, not a solitary flower, but a living, breathing nexus of mountain magic, awakened from its long slumber. The whisper erupted into a full, glorious chorus, a triumphant song that echoed through the glade, and surely, Elara thought, through the very heart of the Whisperwind Mountains. The starlight pool pulsed with renewed vigor, its surface rippling with vibrant colors. The lumen sprite danced in the air, its light almost blinding in its joy. The entire glade felt as if it had taken a deep, collective breath, and was now exhaling pure magic. Elara felt an extraordinary connection to it all. The energy flowing from the echo bloom coursed through her, tingling in her veins, making her feel as if she herself were glowing. She could hear the mountains singing, truly singing, not just with her ears, but with her soul. She could feel the ancient roots reaching deep, drawing power from the earth's core, and the shimmering branches reaching towards the sky, communing with the stars. She understood now. The echo bloom wasn't just a lost artifact to be found. It was a living entity, a heart that had merely slept, waiting for the right touch, the right resonance, to awaken it. And somehow, through her grandmother's lineage, through the magic that stirred within her, she had been that resonance. But even as the echo bloom pulsed with renewed life, Elara sensed that its awakening was just the beginning. The light it cast was breathtaking, but it was contained within this hidden glade. Its song was beautiful, but she knew, deep in her bones, that the Whisperwind Mountains held more secrets, more places where the magic had dimmed, waiting to be rekindled. The true power of the echo bloom, its ability to weave magic back into the world, was yet to be fully realized. She looked at the vibrant heart of the echo bloom, at the dancing lumen sprite, and then out into the shadowed reaches of the glade, sensing the vastness of the mountains beyond. Her adventure was far from over. This was not the end of her quest, but a glorious new beginning, a first step towards truly understanding the whisper and the ancient magic of her world. The echo bloom was awake, but its song needed to spread, to reach every corner of the mountains and beyond. And Elara, with the echo bloom's renewed magic coursing through her, felt ready to help it sing. And Elara, with the echo bloom's renewed magic coursing through her, felt ready to help it sing. The glade, once a place of shadowed quietude, now pulsed with a gentle, emerald light. The echo bloom, a beacon in the center, unfurled its petals further, releasing a soft bell-like chime that vibrated through the very air. Elara felt its energy intertwine with her own, a warm, humming current that settled in her chest. She looked down at Fizz, the dew sprite, who zipped excitedly around her head, leaving trails of faint, glittering dust. His tiny, translucent wings beat a happy blur. "Where do we go first, Fizz?" Elara whispered, her voice feeling stronger, more resonant than before. The vastness of the mountains, which had once seemed daunting, now felt like a grand tapestry waiting to be unfurled. She could sense faint threads of magic, like dormant veins beneath the earth, waiting for the echo bloom's song to awaken them. Fizz chirped, a sound like tiny silver bells, and darted towards the northern edge of the glade, where the forest thinned, and the first rocky slopes of the foothills began to rise. It was a direction Elara had subconsciously felt drawn to as well, towards the higher, more ancient peaks, where the air was thin, and the stone held centuries of forgotten whispers. With a deep breath, Elara stepped out of the glade, the soft earth giving way to firmer ground. The echo bloom's magic guided her feet, making the ascent feel less strenuous than it should have. The trees grew sparser here, gnarled pines clinging to the rock, their branches reaching like ancient fingers towards the sky. The air grew cooler, carrying the scent of pine needles and damp stone. As they climbed, Elara noticed the subtle signs of the fading magic she'd heard about. The lichens on the rocks were duller, their greens and grays muted. The small mountain wildflowers, though hardy, seemed to droop, their petals lacking the vibrant intensity they should possess. Even the wind, which usually whistled with a lively tune through the crevices, sounded like a sigh. She paused at a small outcrop, looking out over a valley that stretched below. It was beautiful, but she could see the faint pallor, the lack of sparkle that indicated a world holding its breath. Taking another deep breath, Elara reached out with her hand, feeling the echo bloom's magic well up within her. She didn't know what to do exactly, but she felt an instinct. She hummed a low, sweet melody, a tune that felt as ancient as the mountains themselves, a resonance of the echo bloom's chime. As the sound left her lips, a shimmer of emerald light pulsed from her hand, flowing outwards like ripples on a pond. It touched the nearest patch of dull lichen, and instantly, a vibrant, almost luminescent green bloomed across the rock, spreading outwards in intricate patterns. A small cluster of mountain asters nearby straightened their stems, their pale violet petals deepening to a rich jewel-like hue, sparkling as if freshly kissed by dew. Fizz zipped around the revitalized flowers, chittering with delight. Elara felt a surge of joyful warmth. It was working. The echo bloom's song wasn't just a sound. It was a living, breathing essence that could stir life back into the world. Her heart swelled with purpose. This was just the beginning. They continued their climb, the path growing steeper and rockier. The trees dwindled, replaced by vast expanses of weathered stone. Here, the wind began to truly sing, not with a sigh, but with a low, mournful hum that echoed off the sheer rock faces. This was the entrance to the Whispering Crags, a region known for its labyrinthine passages and the strange, resonant sounds that seemed to emanate from the very stone. Elara felt the shift in energy here. The magic wasn't simply dormant. It felt tangled, distorted, like a melody played out of tune. The wind carried not just sound, but a faint, unsettling vibration that made her teeth ache. She saw strange, almost crystalline formations embedded in the rock, shimmering dully in the sparse sunlight. They looked like frozen tears, or fossilized echoes of ancient magic. "Fizz, do you hear that?" she whispered, straining to discern a pattern in the cacophony of the wind. Fizz, usually fearless, hovered closer to her shoulder, his glow dimming slightly. He chirped nervously, pointing a tiny translucent hand towards a dark opening in a massive rock face. From within, Elara could faintly hear a rhythmic scraping, a sound like tiny claws on stone, accompanied by the wind's mournful wail. Cautiously, Elara approached the opening. It was a narrow crevice, barely wide enough for her to squeeze through. The air inside was cold and damp, smelling of mineral and ancient dust. The scraping sound grew louder, and she could now hear faint, melodic clicks and whistles, like a conversation held in stone. Peeking through the opening, Elara saw a vast cavern, not dark, but dimly lit by the faint diffused glow of the crystalline formations in the walls. And moving amongst them were creatures she'd never imagined. They were small, no taller than her knee, with bodies like polished pebbles, smooth and gray, yet agile. Their limbs were spindly, tipped with tiny, delicate claws that made the scraping sound as they moved over the rock. Their faces were like finely carved stone, with deep-set, luminous eyes that glowed with an inner, soft light. These were the stone sifters, creatures born of the mountains themselves, said to guard its deepest secrets. They were gathered around a particularly large, fractured crystal, its usually vibrant inner light almost completely extinguished. Their clicks and whistles were filled with distress as they tried to coax a glow from it, tapping it gently with their claws. Their movements were slow, burdened, and Elara realized they weren't just observing the dying crystal. They were suffering with it. The faint, distorted magic of the crags was weakening them, dulling their own inner light. Elara felt a pang of sympathy. These creatures, so intrinsically linked to the stone, were fading along with it. She knew what she had to do. Taking another deep breath, she stepped fully into the cavern, her arrival causing a flurry of startled clicks and whistles. The stone sifters froze, their luminous eyes turning towards her, filled with a mixture of fear and curiosity. "Greetings," Elara said softly, her voice echoing gently in the cavern. "I mean you no harm. I carry the song of the echo bloom." She held out her hand, letting the emerald light pulse softly from her palm. The stone sifters exchanged wary glances, their clicks faster now. One, slightly larger than the others, with a more intricate pattern of veins running through its stony skin, stepped forward. Its luminous eyes seemed to pierce her, searching. It extended a spindly claw not to threaten but to tap the air in front of her, as if testing the vibrations of her presence. Elara remained still, letting the echo bloom's gentle magic emanate from her. She focused on the fractured crystal, sensing its deep-seated sorrow. This wasn't just a crystal, it was a heart of the crags, a conduit of its unique magic. Its fracture represented the deeper wound in this part of the mountain. Slowly, carefully, Elara approached the fractured crystal. The stone sifters watched her every move, silent now, their collective gaze intense. She placed her hand gently on the cold, dull surface of the crystal, and closed her eyes. She reached deep within herself, drawing on the vibrant power of the echo bloom. She didn't hum this time, but projected a silent, pure tone of healing, a resonance that sought to mend the cracks, to coax the dormant light back to life. A ripple of emerald light, stronger than before, pulsed from her hand, flowing into the crystal. At first, nothing happened. Then a faint inner luminescence began to flicker within the depths of the fractured stone. It was hesitant, like a breath held for too long, then slowly released. The crack itself didn't vanish, but it began to shimmer, not with dullness but with a new, vibrant energy. The crystal's light grew, a soft, warm glow of amber and amethyst, pulsing steadily, like a slow heartbeat. The stone sifters gasped, a collective intake of breath that sounded like falling pebbles. Their own luminous eyes brightened, and the patterns on their stony skin seemed to deepen in color. The larger stone sifter, the apparent leader, rushed forward, placing its own clawed hand on the revitalized crystal, letting out a series of joyful, melodious clicks and whistles. The cavern filled with a soft, warm light, chasing away the shadows. The wind outside seemed to change its tune, its mournful wail giving way to a more harmonious hum. The stone sifters gathered around Ilara, their initial wariness replaced by an outpouring of gratitude. They chittered and clicked, bowing their heads, their internal lights glowing brightly. The leader, whose name Ilara somehow understood to be Kale, tapped its claw on the ground, then pointed to the now glowing crystal. Through a series of clicks and gestures, Kale communicated that this crystal was the heartstone of their dwelling, and its fading had dimmed their own spirit. Ilara had not only revived the crystal, but had also renewed their connection to the mountain's magic. In return for her kindness, Kale offered guidance. It led Ilara to a hidden passage, a narrow slit in the cavern wall that she would never have noticed on her own. The Echo Bloom's song needs to reach deeper, Kale clicked, its voice resonating with a new strength. To the places where the mountain dreams, follow the path of the luminous moss. It will lead you to the crystal caves, where the true silence sleeps. With a final grateful bow, Kale and the other stone sifters watched as Ilara, with Fizz darting ahead, stepped into the hidden passage. The air immediately grew warmer, surprisingly so, and a faint ethereal glow began to emanate from the walls. This was the luminous moss, just as Kale had described, but its light was weak, barely enough to guide her. The passage sloped gently downwards, winding deeper into the mountain's embrace. The silence here was profound, unlike the echoing whispers of the crags. It was a deep, ancient silence, pregnant with hidden magic. As they ventured further, the luminous moss grew more abundant, covering the walls and ceiling in a soft, velvety carpet, but its glow remained faint, like dying embers. Fizz, sensing the moss's weakness, tried to coax it brighter with his own tiny light, but his efforts were like a single star against a vast night sky. Ilara understood. This was another place where the Echo Bloom's song was desperately needed. The true silence Kale had spoken of wasn't peace. It was the quiet of a fading heartbeat. Eventually, the passage opened into a breathtaking sight. Ilara gasped. They were in the crystal caves, a series of vast interconnected caverns, each more magnificent than the last. Massive crystalline formations soared from floor to ceiling, pillars of quartz, amethyst, and emerald, glimmering even in the dim light. Stalactites and stalagmites met in delicate, sparkling kisses. Underground springs trickled down terraces of polished stone, forming pools of impossibly clear water that reflected the faint glow of the moss and the crystals. But despite their inherent beauty, the caves felt lifeless. The crystals, though magnificent in form, lacked the inner fire, the vibrant play of light that should dance within them. The springs flowed with a languid sorrow, and the air was heavy with an ancient slumber. The luminous moss, though widespread, barely cast enough light to see the distant walls. Ilara walked amongst the silent grandeur, her footsteps echoing softly. She felt the magic here, deep and powerful, but it was dormant, like a giant sleeping beneath a blanket of stone. The Echo Bloom within her pulsed with an eager anticipation, a desire to awaken this sleeping beauty. She found a central chamber, the largest of them all, where a massive crystalline structure rose like an altar. It was a kaleidoscope of colors, but dulled, as if viewed through a veil. All around it, the luminous moss was at its thickest, covering every surface, yet its light was almost imperceptible. Taking a seat on a smooth, cool stone, Ilara closed her eyes and focused. She drew upon the Echo Bloom's full strength, letting its song resonate not just from her voice, but from her very being. This time she didn't hum a melody, but projected a wave of pure emerald light, a pulse of awakening. The effect was instantaneous and spectacular. The luminous moss, touched by the Echo Bloom's energy, flared to life. A wave of brilliant phosphorescent green swept through the cavern, chasing away every shadow. The walls, ceiling, and floor erupted in a soft ethereal glow, turning the caves into an otherworldly wonderland. The light intensified, reflecting off the myriad crystals, scattering rainbows across the cavern walls, making the entire space shimmer and dance. As the moss's light grew, so did the crystals. Their inner fires rekindled, pulsing with vibrant hues, deep purples, fiery reds, sapphire blues, and emerald greens, creating a breathtaking symphony of light and color. The underground springs, now illuminated by the dazzling display, seemed to bubble with renewed energy, their trickling sounds becoming a melodic murmur. And then, she heard it. A soft, chittering sound, like tiny pebbles shifting, coming from the shadowed recesses of the chamber. As the light continued to grow, a figure slowly emerged. It was a creature unlike any she had seen. Small and squat, with smooth gray skin, it moved with a slow, deliberate grace. Its most striking feature was its eyes, or rather, the lack thereof. Where eyes should have been, there were only smooth, unblemished patches of skin like polished stone. Yet it seemed to see with an inner sense, its head turning as if perceiving the new, vibrant light. This was a glimmer grumble, a creature of the deep caves, known for its incredible sensitivity to light and sound, even without conventional sight. They relied entirely on the natural luminescence of the caves, the luminous moss, the glowing crystals, the subtle hum of underground water, to navigate and thrive. And this one, Elara realized, must have been living in near total darkness for a very long time. The glimmer grumble raised its head, its smooth face tilted towards the brightest point of the moss. A soft rumbling purr emanated from its chest, a sound of profound contentment and wonder. It slowly extended a broad, flat hand, palm up, towards the glowing moss, as if trying to cup the light. Elara watched, deeply moved. This creature had been living in a world of dim echoes and whispers, its very existence threatened by the fading magic. Now its home was vibrant again, alive with the light it so desperately needed. The glimmer grumble turned its smooth face towards Elara, and though it had no eyes, Elara felt a gaze of pure gratitude settle upon her. It let out another rumbling purr, then began to move, slowly but purposefully, towards a part of the chamber where the crystals were particularly brilliant. It tapped a specific, shimmering column of amethyst with its hand, then gestured towards Elara with a soft, chittering sound. "You wish for me to go this way?" Elara asked gently, feeling a connection that transcended words. The glimmer grumble nodded its head, a slow, deliberate motion. It then made a series of soft, guttural sounds, which Elara somehow understood to mean, "The path of light leads high. Where the sky flowers yearn for the sun, the cloud weavers will show you the way to the mountain's crown." Elara felt a thrill of excitement. The mountain's crown. That must be the very highest peak, the place where the echo bloom's song could truly spread across the entire range, and perhaps even beyond. With a final grateful purr from the glimmer grumble, and a last look at the now dazzling crystal caves, Elara and Fizz followed the path indicated. The passage began to ascend, the luminous moss guiding their way, its emerald glow now strong and unwavering. The air grew cooler again, carrying the faint, sweet scent of blooming flowers, a stark contrast to the mineral tang of the caves. The passage eventually opened out onto a ledge high above the world, bathed in the soft glow of dawn. Elara stepped out, shielding her eyes from the sudden brightness. Before her lay a sight that made her heart sing. This was the Sky Garden. A series of vast tiered plateaus clung to the mountainside, surprisingly lush and vibrant at such an altitude. Flowers of every imaginable color bloomed in riotous profusion, their petals shimmering with dew, their scents mingling in the crisp, cool air. Strange, delicate trees with silver leaves swayed gently in the breeze. Butterflies with wings like stained glass danced among the blossoms. Yet even here, Elara could sense the lingering touch of the fading magic. Though beautiful, the Sky Garden's colors weren't quite as brilliant as they should be. The leaves of the silver trees had a faint, dusty film. The air felt a little too dry, the soil a little too parched. It was as if the garden was holding its breath, waiting for a deep drink. And then she saw them. Tiny figures, no bigger than Fizz, with delicate, iridescent wings and bodies woven from strands of light and mist. They flitted amongst the flowers, tending them with gentle touches, their movements like a silent dance. These were the cloud weavers, ethereal beings said to be born of mist and starlight, who tended the high-altitude flora, and, it was whispered, wove the very clouds that brought rain to the mountains. Their movements, however, were slow, their iridescent wings duller than they should be. Their songs, which were said to be as beautiful as the chimes of 1,000 tiny bells, were faint, barely audible. They looked tired, their magic waning, their delicate forms struggling to maintain the sky garden's fragile beauty against the encroaching dryness. As Elara watched, one of the cloud weavers, its body a shimmering cascade of sapphire and pearl, gently touched a wilting sky lily. The lily, however, did not revive. The cloud weaver let out a soft, mournful sigh, a sound like rustling silk, and its glow dimmed further. Elara knew her task. The echo bloom's song needed to bring life and moisture back to these parched heights. It needed to rekindle the magic of the cloud weavers so they could weave their songs of rain once more. She stepped forward, her presence drawing the attention of the cloud weavers. They paused their work, their delicate, luminous eyes, like tiny dewdrops, turning towards her. Their expressions were wary, but also held a flicker of hope. "Greetings," Elara said softly, her voice carrying on the gentle breeze. "I am Elara, and I bring the song of the echo bloom. I wish to help your sky gardens flourish once more." She extended her hand, letting the emerald light pulse, a beacon of promise. The cloud weavers, led by the sapphire and pearl one, whose name Elara felt was Lyra, slowly approached. Lyra hovered before Elara, its luminous eyes studying the pulsing light of the echo bloom. It stretched out a tiny, translucent hand, and a faint, silvery thread of mist spun from its fingertips, gently touching Elara's outstretched palm. It was a gesture of cautious trust, and Elara felt the cool, damp touch of mountain air. Lyra communicated not with words, but with images and feelings that flowed into Elara's mind. Images of the sky gardens wilting, of the clouds growing thin and distant, of their weaving songs losing their power, unable to call forth the life-giving rain. They were fading, and with them, the very essence of these high peaks. Elara nodded, understanding. "I will help you. I will help you weave your songs again." She sat down amidst the most wilted patch of sky lilies, and began to sing. Her voice, infused with the echo bloom's magic, was no longer just a human voice. It was a melody of growth and renewal, a song of rain and sunshine, of life unfurling from slumber. As she sang, the emerald light pulsed from her, not just touching the flowers but rising into the air, mingling with the mist-like forms of the cloud weavers. The effect was profound. The parched earth beneath the sky lilies began to soften, absorbing the magical moisture that flowed from Elara's song. The lilies themselves straightened, their delicate petals unfurling, their colors deepening to a vibrant, almost intoxicating hue. The silver trees shimmered, their leaves shedding the dust, revealing their true, gleaming beauty. And the cloud weavers, as the echo bloom's song touched them, their iridescent wings brightened, their forms becoming more distinct, more vibrant. Lyra, caught in the melody, began to hum, a soft bell-like chime that intertwined with Elara's song. Other cloud weavers joined in, their individual chimes weaving into a chorus of ethereal music. As they sang, glowing threads of mist began to gather around them, swirling and coalescing, not just from the mountain air, but seemingly from the very magic of their rejuvenated forms. They began to weave. With nimble, glowing hands, they spun the threads of mist, guided by their renewed song, shaping them into delicate, intricate patterns. As the weaving progressed, the mist grew denser, heavier, rising higher into the air. The sky above the sky gardens, which had been a clear, dry blue, began to cloud over. Wisps of soft gray mist appeared, growing larger, darker, coalescing into fluffy, promising clouds. Soon, a soft, gentle rain began to fall, pattering softly on the leaves and flowers. It wasn't a harsh downpour, but a life-giving drizzle, nourishing the thirsty earth and washing the sky gardens clean. The cloud weavers rejoiced, their chimes reaching a crescendo of pure delight, their wings fluttering with renewed energy. Lyra flew to Elara, its tiny form shimmering with gratitude. It touched Elara's cheek with a soft, misty hand, and in her mind, Elara heard a clear, joyful thought. "You have brought us back our song, our rain, our purpose. The mountain's crown awaits. We can take you closer." Lyra gestured towards a massive cloud that had now settled above the highest terrace of the sky gardens. It was larger, denser, and seemed to pulse with a gentle inner light. "It is a cloud raft," Lyra communicated, "woven for safe passage to the higher slopes, where even the cloud weavers rarely tread. From there, the crown will be within reach." Elara felt a thrill of anticipation. The mountain's crown. The highest point. Mountain. The place where the echo bloom's song could truly unfurl its wings and fly across the entire world. With a grateful smile to Lyra and the other cloud weavers, she walked towards the cloud raft, Fizz buzzing excitedly around her. She stepped onto the soft, yielding surface of the cloud, which felt surprisingly firm beneath her feet. It was cool and damp, and smelled of fresh rain. The cloud weavers, with a collective melodious chime, gently pushed the cloud raft away from the ledge. It drifted upwards, surprisingly swiftly, guided by their unseen magic. Elara looked back at the now vibrant sky gardens, sparkling under the gentle rain, alive with color and the joyful songs of the cloud weavers. As the cloud raft ascended, the air grew colder, thinner, but Elara felt no discomfort. The echo bloom's magic coursed through her, keeping her warm and strong. Below, the mountain range spread out like a vast ancient kingdom. Above, the highest peaks, jagged and majestic, pierced the clear, blue sky. And among them, one peak stood out, taller than all the others, its summit shrouded in a faint, perpetual mist, even on this clear day. The mountain's crown. Elara felt a powerful pull, a deep, resonant hum from that shrouded peak. It was a place of immense ancient magic, perhaps the source of the whisper itself. It was also, she sensed, the place where the echo bloom's song would face its greatest challenge, or find its truest voice. The cloud raft carried her steadily upwards, towards that enigmatic summit, a glorious new chapter of her quest unfolding with every breath of crisp mountain air. Her adventure was far from over. The cloud raft drifted higher, the air thinning, carrying the crisp scent of frost and ancient stone. The mountain's crown slowly resolved from the mist, not a jagged peak, but a vast crystalline plateau, shimmering faintly with inner light. Towers of wind-sculpted ice rose like silent sentinels, encircling a central depression where a tranquil pool of liquid starlight, impossibly still, reflected the heavens. Here, silence was profound, yet it hummed with an almost palpable energy. As the cloud raft settled gently, Elara stepped onto the icy expanse, her boots crunching softly. The central pool glowed with internal luminescence, not water, but pure liquid starlight, coalesced into a shimmering basin. This was the heart of the whisper. The whisper, she understood, wasn't a sound, but a profound connection to the cosmos that had diminished, leaving the world muted. The echo bloom would reawaken the world's ability to hear it. A tremor ran through the plateau. From the depths of the starlight pool, an ethereal manifestation of light and sound began to rise, swirling like a galaxy. It was the whisper itself, ancient and magnificent, a silent symphony of cosmic energies. Expectant, not hostile, it was a vast consciousness waiting. Elara knew, her song was not a plea, but a key. Taking a deep breath, Elara withdrew the echo bloom. Its fully unfurled petals pulsed with a gentle glow, mirroring the starlight pool. She held it aloft, feeling vibrations travel through her arm, into her heart. Closing her eyes, she began to sing. Her song was not of words, but pure feeling, a melody born of moonlight and mountain winds, of quiet streams and rustling leaves, of every beautiful sound she cherished. It was the world's song, remembered and rewoven, amplified by the echo bloom. The bloom glowed intensely, sending shimmering tendrils into the starlight pool. The ethereal whisper pulsed, absorbing the melody, integrating it. As Elara sang, the silence around her filled not with noise, but with an awakening. She felt the ancient cosmic connection re-establish itself, a delicate web of harmony stretching across the land. The starlight pool resonated, sending out ripples of pure, vibrant sound, omnipresent, like the silent song of the stars finally heard by the earth. The mountain's crown vibrated, a magnificent tuning fork for the world. When her song faded, the echo bloom's glow softened, its petals gently folding in contentment. The ethereal whisper settled back into the starlight pool, which now shimmered with new, vibrant energy, radiating a soft, constant hum that resonated deep within Elara. From the mountain's crown, she looked out. Below, the world was still shrouded in mist, but she sensed the change. The muting silence was gone, replaced not by clamor, but by a subtle symphony, the silent song of growing things, the gentle hum of the earth's core, the distant music of the cosmos. The world had found its truest voice, not in loudness, but in the clarity of its unique symphony. The echo bloom hadn't created new sounds, but retuned the world to hear the ones always there, just beyond perception. Elara felt a profound peace. Her quest complete, the cloud raft drifted gently back to the plateau's edge. As she stepped aboard, she glanced back at the starlight pool, now a beacon of soft resonant light. The mountain's crown, no longer merely enigmatic, stood as a testament to the world's reawakened harmony. The whisper was no longer a lost secret, but a living song, woven into existence. With a gentle sigh, Elara leaned back as the cloud raft began its slow descent. The crisp mountain air carried the faintest echo of a cosmic hum, a lullaby whispered across the heavens. She closed her eyes, knowing that tonight, and every night after, the world would sleep, cradled in its own beautiful rediscovered song. And so, dear listener, may you too find quiet harmony in your heart, and drift into dreams filled with the gentle magic of the world, now singing truly once more.